I'm Bakhtiar Sanova, and let's go through the main headlines. Donald Trump hits the pause button to attack Iran following a request from the Gulf states. At least 131 have died from the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And Hungary's Magyar visits Poland on first tour abroad as a prime minister. U.S. President Donald Trump has postponed a Tuesday military strike on Iran to give ongoing peace talks more time. Negotiators are racing against the clock as Pakistan passes a new revised conflict resolution plan. From Tehran to Washington.
President Donald Trump says the United States is holding off on a possible military strike against Iran, saying Gulf nations urged Washington to give diplomacy more time as serious negotiations continue with Tehran. Trump stressed that the US would not allow Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon, but indicated he hopes a diplomatic solution can prevent a wider regional conflict.
We're not going to let Iran have a nuclear weapon. So I was called by these three countries plus others, and they're dealing directly with our people and right now Iran. And there seems to be a very good chance that they can work something out. If we can do that without bombing the hell out of them, I'd be very happy. Please.
The comments come as indirect talks between Washington and Tehran appear to be making progress, despite ongoing mistrust and continued tensions across the Middle East. Iranian officials say they are reviewing US feedback and have already sent a revised 14-point proposal to Pakistani mediators. The new draft focuses on trust-building measures to end the war that began with US and Israeli attacks in February. Despite a ceasefire reached in April, tensions remain high. Iran's foreign ministry says it approaches the talks with deep skepticism, citing Washington's track record. Tehran also dismissed repeated US threats that military action could resume if negotiations fail. Disagreements also persist over a key economic issue. Iranian state media claims Washington agreed to waive sanctions on Iranian oil during the talks, but a US official flatly denied that claim, calling it false. Meanwhile, global energy markets are on edge. Oil prices are climbing over fears of prolonged supply disruptions, particularly through the vital Strait of Hormuz.
Tehran says it has forwarded its revised counter-proposal to a U.S. draft in which it has laid down Iran's conditions for a peace agreement with Washington, including ending the maritime blockade and removing of sanctions. Turaj Shrialullah from Iran has the details.
Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Kazem Garibabadi has announced the major points of Tehran's latest version of conditions to reach a peace deal with the United States. According to a spokesman of the Parliament's National Security and Foreign Policy Committee, Ebrahim Rezai, the senior diplomat declared Iran's terms in a meeting with the committee's members on Monday. The MP quoted Garibabadi as saying Iran has demanded that war must end on all fronts, including in Lebanon. U.S. forces withdraw from the region surrounding Iran. The maritime blockade be lifted, nuclear sanctions be removed, and Iran's assets, frozen since 1979 Islamic Revolution, be released. Also on Monday, Foreign Ministry spokesman Esmail Baqai said that Iran has sent its new 14-point counter-proposal to the U.S. via Pakistani mediators. Without elaborating on the details of Iran's draft, the spokesman said Tehran received Washington's response to its previous proposal last week, despite U.S. statement of dismissing Iran's conditions. He stated that Iran's nuclear program is not on the agenda of negotiations, stressing that war damage compensation is an issue which Tehran has been seriously demanding. Meantime, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi met with Pakistani Interior Minister Mohsen Raza Naqvi, during which they discussed bilateral ties as well as Pakistan's mediation between Iran and the United States. According to official sources, he told the visiting Pakistani official that while Iran is serious about diplomacy, it will not miss any opportunity to enhance its defense readiness. His position was reiterated by President Masoud Pezeshkian, who stated at a conference in Tehran that Iran would not yield to pressure from any foreign power. reaffirming his administration's commitment to engaging in dialogue with dignity. Turaj Shiralilu from Tehran for A News.
A fertilizer shortage linked to the Hormuz crisis is adding pressure on Australian wheat farmers, with some now reducing crops as costs rise and dry conditions threaten production.
Australia's wheat belt is heading into a difficult season, with dry weather and rising input costs forcing growers to scale back planting. The pressure comes as disruption around the Strait of Hormuz has affected fertilizer supplies from the Middle East, a key source for Australia's farming sector. In Brocklesby, farmer Justin Everett is cutting his wheat area by half after sharp increases in fuel and fertilizer costs.
Yeah, with the triple whammy of weather, fuel and fertiliser, I think we're likely to see a drop in production right across Australia. I think everyone will be trying to save their money and put it into, just make sure that they can get through to the other end and get to next year and go again. That's the most important bit, is making sure you're right to go next year.
The concern is not limited to one farm. Australia is the world's third largest wheat exporter, and the smaller harvest could tighten global supply and add pressure to prices. Analysts say the country may have up to 10 million tonnes less wheat to ship in the coming season, equal to about 5% of annual global exports. For Everett, the response is already visible across his fields. Some land will be left without crops this season as he looks for ways to limit costs and protect income.
Yep, we've pulled back on our total planting. We're going to let some paddocks just go through with no crop in them. I'll put livestock on those paddocks, and we're going to have a bit more of a livestock focus throughout the year. I think there's potential for more income from the livestock going forward.
Fertiliser remains one of the biggest risks. Australia usually imports more than half of its nitrogen fertilisers from the Middle East, but supply has been disrupted, leaving the country with about 600,000 tonnes less urea than it uses in a typical year. Farmers using less fertiliser this season may save money in the short term, but weaker soil nutrients could make the next planting cycle more difficult.
Global finance leaders have met in Paris to assess the economic fallout from the Middle East conflict, with concerns growing over energy markets, fertilizer supplies, and pressure on vulnerable economies. The talks brought together G7 finance ministers, central bank governors, and officials from Gulf states Brazil, India, Kenya, and South Korea. Discussions focused on support for countries most exposed to the crisis, possible disruption in the Strait of Hormuz, and volatility in global bond markets. Officials also discussed critical minerals, trade imbalances, and continued pressure on Russia over Ukraine. NATO's military committee will bring together defense chiefs from all 32 allies on Tuesday in Brussels for high-level talks on the alliance's security priorities. Chaired by Admiral Giuseppe Cavo Dragone, the meeting will focus on strengthening NATO's deterrence and defense, with briefings on support for Ukraine.
The alliance remains vigilant 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, on all fronts, from the east to south to the high north, including the Arctic. Since we last met in this format in January, new crises arose. Existing crises have deepened, and the security environment has become even more demanding. Russia war against Ukraine is now fully into its 5th year. I was in Ukraine 3 weeks ago, and I can confirm this war remains brutal, consequential, and directly relevant to our security.
Tensions between Russia and Ukraine continue to escalate, with both sides reporting fresh strikes targeting critical infrastructure and industrial facilities. Meanwhile, concerns are growing over the security of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant as Moscow and Kiev exchange accusations amid stalled peace efforts.
Ukrainian authorities said a Russian drone strike damaged vehicles at an enterprise in the northern city of Chernihiv on Monday. Officials said a fuel truck and another vehicle were heavily damaged in the attack. Firefighters carried out cooling operations at the scene following the strike, while no casualties were immediately reported. Meanwhile, Russia said it carried out a massive retaliatory strike on Monday, targeting enterprises linked to Ukraine's military-industrial complex, energy infrastructure facilities, and military port infrastructure. In a statement, the Russian Defense Ministry said the strikes were conducted in response to Ukrainian attacks on Russian territory. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Galutzin told reporters in Moscow that there were no signals from Kyiv regarding the next round of peace negotiations, adding that Moscow remains in constant contact with Washington on the issue. In a separate statement on Telegram, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Ukraine's strikes on Russian energy infrastructure were having a significant impact, claiming many companies had been forced to reduce oil production and shut down dozens of oil wells.
In just recent months, Russia's oil refining has dropped by 10%. It is also important to note that Russian oil companies are being forced to shut down their oil wells. This is even more significant. Given the nature of Russian oil production, this is what hurts them most, apart, of course, from losing money.
Meanwhile, the head of Russia's state nuclear corporation, Rosatom, warned that the situation around the Russian-held Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine was approaching the point of no return, due to increased Ukrainian attacks in the area. The Russian-installed management at the plant, Europe's largest nuclear facility with 6 reactors, said Ukrainian forces had attacked the site for the 3rd consecutive day.
Tensions surrounding Iran are once again at the center of global attention after reports of a drone strike near a UAE nuclear facility heightened fears of regional escalation. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump says serious negotiations are underway, but he has also warned that the United States remains ready for military action if diplomacy fails. At the same time, the International Energy Agency warns global oil inventories are shrinking rapidly amid disruptions linked to the Iran crisis and concerns over the Strait of Hormuz. To discuss the geopolitical, military and economic implications of this rapidly evolving situation, we are joined by Enrique Casero, political analyst who speaks to us from Madrid, Spain. Mr. Casero, welcome to the program and thank you for joining us. It looks like we have lost connection with our guest. Now we continue with our next story. A rapidly spreading Ebola outbreak in Central Africa is triggering international concern, with the World Health Organization warning the virus may already be circulating far beyond the current confirmed cases.
A fast-moving Ebola outbreak in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo and Uganda has been declared a public health emergency by the World Health Organization. The death toll has risen sharply, with hundreds of suspected cases now linked to the outbreak. Infections have been reported in urban areas of eastern DRC, while neighbouring Uganda has also confirmed cases.
Early on Sunday, I declared a public health emergency of international concern over an epidemic of Ebola disease in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Uganda. This is the first time a Director General has declared a FIC before convening an emergency committee. I did not do this lightly. I did it in accordance with Article 12 of the International Health Regulations after consulting the ministers of health of both countries and because I'm deeply concerned about the scale and speed of the epidemic.
The outbreak is centred in Ituri province, where conflict, weak health services and delayed detection have complicated the response. Congolese health officials say early tests failed to detect the virus because they were looking for the more common Zaire strain, while the current outbreak is caused by Bundibugyo.
You see, this outbreak was detected very late. even too late. Why? Because when the first cases appeared, they took samples and sent them to laboratories, for example, the Bunia laboratory. But in these laboratories, they used the techniques we had used for the 2018 outbreak. They used specific cartridges for Ebola Zaire. And these Ebola Zaire cartridges did not recognize Ebola Bundibugyo.
Officials also linked part of the early spread to funeral practices before communities were aware Ebola was involved. The Bundibugyo strain has no approved vaccine or virus-specific treatment, though WHO says public health measures remain central to slowing transmission.
WHO has a team on the ground supporting national authorities to respond. We have deployed people, supplies, equipment, and funds. I have approved an additional $3.4 million from the contingency fund for emergencies, bringing the total to $3.9 million.
WHO says surveillance, contact tracing, safe burials, and protective equipment are now central to the response. Uganda has postponed its annual Martyrs' Day celebrations because of the risk of further spread. Some border crossings have seen tighter controls, but WHO has urged countries not to close borders, warning that unmonitored movement could make the outbreak harder to contain.
Now we'll speak about Middle East crisis with our guest Enrique Casero, political analyst who speaks to us from Madrid, Spain. Mr. Casero, welcome to the program and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me back.
Mr. Casero, how serious is the current risk of a direct military confrontation between the United States and Iran?
We can officially say that we're in the middle of a war of attrition after 3 months and no clear path for a way out. Right now, the situation is really serious because we can't. There is no sense of going further or going backwards. There is no sense of who's winning or who's losing, and which means that we're in a sort of a stalemate. And and I can say more, probably no. There is no talk. There is no accord. There is no negotiation who can free this situation out for the next days. So, as I said before, this is a war of attrition, and within that war of attrition, we can consider that we are completely in a stalemate.
Mr. Casero, but Iran has warned Washington against what it calls strategic mistakes. How should we interpret Tehran's current posture?
We have to, in this point, we have to consider that Iran is now watching themselves or as sort of survivors. There is, and when you are a survivor, there is no reason for thinking in anything else. There is not surviving itself, right? So any mistake that Iran can consider that the United States could make at this point of time, it could mean a new threat for the United States, a new threat for the allied countries, a new threat for whatever American interest is around the geographical zone, the area around that part of the map. So. And the other part of that is what Iran can consider a strategic mistake. So I think here we're playing with a very broad scope of chances that Iran can take any exit or take any solution they want, considering what they call strategic mistakes.
So how significant is the domestic political dimension for President Donald Trump, especially with polls showing rising opposition to the war? Could growing public dissatisfaction in the United States limit Washington's
we can answer to that question with all the pressure that Donald Trump is putting on the Iran's side, right? Donald Trump is constantly, saying that the next strike is going to be really the final, the ultimate strike. The next strike will end with all the Iranian head of government, whatever it is, and the next strike, and the next strike, and the next strike. Why? Because we're, as I said before, we're 3 months into this war, which now is a war of attrition, and there is no winning perception in the United States for Donald Trump. They didn't expect that the war were called for being this long, and they didn't expect that things took this path of constant back and forth, in order to say, I throw you a threat, and then you throw me back another one, and then I throw you a threat back. So for the United States and for the domestic situation, there is no win for Donald Trump in here. And in despite of whatever the speech of President Trump is gonna be, or it is right now, there is no more way to hide that the United States is completely stuck on this situation in Iran. So I think it's a pretty serious situation for Donald Trump in his domestic policy.
Enrique Casera, thank you very much for joining us and sharing your insights with us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Budapest is seeking a fresh start with Warsaw as Hungary's new leadership looks to rebuild European ties and move away from years of political friction. Hungary's new Prime Minister Peter Magyar began his first foreign visit as Hungary's Prime Minister in Poland in a symbolic reset after years of strained ties under Viktor Orban. He is due to meet Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, with talks expected to cover EU funds, Ukraine energy security and regional cooperation. Magyar has pledged to reduce Hungary's reliance on Russian energy, while Poland is expected to offer Budapest future access to US LNG through its planned Gdansk terminal. Education ministers, policymakers and industry leaders from around the world have gathered in London for the Education World Forum 2026, launching crucial discussions on the future of global learning. This year, the summit tackles critical themes like peace, sustainability and the rapid rise of artificial intelligence. Against a backdrop of growing geopolitical tensions, Azerbaijan's education minister is meeting with international counterparts, focusing on global cooperation and the classroom reform needed to prepare students for the future.
And over the last few years, as you know, Azerbaijan is also implementing a lot of different educational reforms on different areas, from curriculum, teacher education, teacher training, as well as assessment. Well, we are part of the major international assessment initiatives like PISA, TIMSS, PIRLS, where we have our own data, and this data is also pretty much interesting for many countries, and as well as definitely digitalization and AI, which I do believe that are the major directions of the discussion at the moment.
Now let's take a look at the key stories shaping the region. Six people have been killed and several wounded after a series of shootings across southern Turkey on Monday, according to local authorities. Officials said the suspect first killed his former wife before targeting a restaurant and several other locations, opening fire at civilians along his escape route. Among the victims were a restaurant owner, an employee, a teenager and a truck driver. Police and law enforcement units launched a large-scale manhunt using helicopters and drones to search the area while setting up checkpoints on nearby routes. Azerbaijan and Georgia have agreed to deepen cooperation across energy, transport and regional connectivity following high-level talks in Baku. The agreement came during a meeting between Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev and Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Kobakidze, where several key deals were signed.
Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev met with Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Kobakidze in Baku on Monday, with both sides focusing on expanding cooperation in energy, transport and regional connectivity. The visit took place as part of Kobakidze's trip to Azerbaijan to attend the 13th session of the UN World Urban Forum. Both leaders stressed the importance of strengthening the strategic partnership between the two countries. President Aliyev said his recent visit to Georgia helped strengthen bilateral ties, while both sides stressed the importance of expanding cooperation in energy, transport and regional connectivity. A series of agreements were signed during the visit, covering the supply of natural gas and electricity to Georgia, as well as electricity transit through Georgian territory to Turkey. The documents also included the protocol confirming the completion of modernization works on the Baku-Tbilisi-Kars railway project. In addition, an operational agreement was signed between the State Oil Company of Azerbaijan, SOCAR Midstream Operations, and the Georgian Oil and Gas Corporation. It defines the operating terms for the Georgian section of the Western Route export pipeline, including the Supsa oil terminal and related infrastructure. The sides also agreed to resume daily passenger train services on the Baku-Tbilisi-Baku route starting from May 26th. Officials said the meeting further reinforced strategic cooperation and highlighted efforts to strengthen regional energy and transport links.
Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev has spoken to Euronews about the country's growing role in Europe's energy supply and its expanding cooperation with international partners. He also highlighted Azerbaijan's reconstruction efforts in post-conflict areas and the importance of diplomacy in supporting long-term energy projects.
Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev has highlighted the country's expanding role in Europe's energy security, its investment in renewable energy, and its large-scale reconstruction projects in post-conflict territories in an interview with Euronews TV. Speaking on Azerbaijan's growing energy exports, President Ilham Aliyev emphasized that cooperation with Europe is expanding steadily.
10 members of the European Union are our clients, and in total 12 countries from Europe are recipients of Azerbaijani gas. The number of countries is growing. The number of requests for us to start cooperation is growing. And fortunately, we made our homework with the pipeline infrastructure and also with the upstream. So now the level of production is going up. Very soon, probably in the beginning of next month, we will report about the beginning of gas production from the new field. So it's a win-win situation. We need a premium market, which is Europe, and Europe needs alternative source of supply, which is Azerbaijan. So we combine our efforts and established a very fruitful cooperation with the European Commission.
Azerbaijan president noted that ongoing Middle East crisis does not seriously affect country in terms of supply chain. Aliyev also stressed the importance of diplomacy in enabling long-term energy partnerships.
From point of view of our own energy projects, no, we are on the safe side. And always, as you mentioned, advocate for diplomacy. Without diplomacy, we wouldn't have been able to deliver our resources to the markets. Because we had to go across the countries to have good relations with neighbors of the neighbors, establish a multilateral format of cooperation, create a win-win situation between producers, transitors, consumers, so everyone obeys the rules and everyone gets profit.
Outlining Azerbaijan's domestic reconstruction efforts, Aliyev detailed ongoing infrastructure development and renewable energy expansion in post-conflict regions.
So electricity, number one. So far, we already commissioned 307 megawatt of hydropower. and 340 megawatt of solar power is under construction right now. So this will be enough not only for Karabakh and Eastern Zangezur, but to the much broader area. Also, connection of electricity grid to the whole country was organized. 75 kilometers of tunnels, out of which 70 kilometers already commissioned, and 500 bridges, 435 of these bridges already done, railroads, schools, hospitals, so all goes in parallel. And first years of reconstruction, mainly we invested in infrastructure. Now we mainly invest in housing. And the city plans, smart cities, smart village concept, plan for every village, all that is being done.
The president said these efforts are part of a broader strategy, combining infrastructure development, sustainable energy, and modern urban planning in Azerbaijan's reconstruction drive.
After a short break, we head to the venue of the 13th World Urban Forum, one of the largest international platforms dedicated to sustainable cities and urban development taking place in Baku, Azerbaijan, with our Andy Mioch.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
Well, hello there from A News' studio at the World Urban Forum venue here in Baku. The third day of the forum saw a diverse array of events, panels, and discussions. And we will now break it all down, starting with UN Habitat's new report on the global housing situation. Sabina Abubekirova has more on the fresh data and conversations that followed.
UN Habitat has just launched its World Cities Report 2026, focusing on the global housing crisis. According to the report, nearly 3 billion people worldwide, close to 40% of the world's population, are affected by housing challenges. These include unaffordable housing, shortages of adequate homes, poor living conditions, and limited access to basic services. Affordability was one of the key topics raised today. Speakers noted that housing prices in many regions are rising faster than incomes, making adequate housing harder to access.
Relocation or displacement needs to be a very last resort. One always needs to explore local solutions before considering moving people in a distance where their livelihoods would have to be disrupted and restarted in another place. So I think that also means that yes, climate does affect local informal housing, but that's where we have to put all our efforts into innovative engineering solutions, and often these are solutions that are upstream.
If you look at our data on affordability, they experience high levels of affordability as well. Very expensive housing. If you go to Asia, Southeast Asia, a lot of they experience housing pressures as well, both informality. They also experience issues relating to climate resilient housing, and they also experience the high cost of housing. In fact, Hong Kong has been deemed to have the highest levels of unaffordability, whereby you need 21 years of income to be able to afford a modern house in Hong Kong. So these are some of the issues. A lot of Asian countries, a lot of African countries, and also a lot of Latin American countries.
The panel also focused on displacement and climate challenges. According to the report, climate-related hazards could destroy around 167 million homes by 2040. At the same time, more than 123 million people people worldwide have been forcibly displaced, placing additional pressure on urban areas and housing systems. Another issue raised during today's discussion involved informal housing. Experts argued that informal settlements should not automatically be viewed as a problem to eliminate. Instead, they said these communities should be included in housing solutions and urban planning efforts. The discussion also looked toward the future. Cities around the world are expected to absorb an additional 2 billion residents by 2050, increasing demand for housing even further. Experts conclude that solving the housing crisis is not only about building more homes, it's about building the right homes, making them affordable, and creating systems that support communities. Reporting from World Urban Forum in Baku, Sabina Abubekir, Zohrab Shirinov, A News.
Well, the day here at the Baku Olympic Stadium also saw talks on regional integration centered on connectivity and post-conflict reconstruction. One of the sessions also marked a major partnership milestone, officially declaring Azerbaijan's Shusha and Turkey's Trabzon sister cities. Here's more on that.
The 13th session of the World Urban Forum in Baku focused on post-conflict reconstruction as a foundation for regional stability. Under the theme, Cities at the Heart of Connectivity, Azerbaijan's leadership detailed a multi-billion-dollar blueprint for integration. Foreign Minister Ceyhun Bayramov framed the transformation of former conflict zones into economic hubs as a core part of the country's peace strategy.
By investing close to $15 billion in the former conflict zone, Azerbaijan has also demonstrated its genuine interest in closing the chapter of confrontation in the region. In other words, massive post-conflict reconstruction efforts of Azerbaijan should also be seen as an integral part of our peace-building strategy.
The regional rebuilding effort covers over 13,000 square kilometers, targeting the long-term resettlement of more than 1 million people.
The liberated territories cover approximately 13,600 square kilometers and includes 12 cities as well as nearly 300 villages and settlements with the projected population of around 1.1 million people. The general plan therefore established a coordinated framework linking urban development, transport infrastructure, economic activity, environmental systems and rural settlements across Karabakh and East Zangezur.
Beyond newly built zones, major infrastructure upgrades are shaping existing hubs, with Baku utilizing big data through a digital twin model to optimize urban mobility.
We came up with an idea of building the Baku city's digital twin. I mean, maybe in some other societies it would have not been that much possible. Without going to the personal details of our citizens, we have managed to build the lake consisting of 10 billion unique data. We collected the data from mobile operators, we collected the data from the utility companies, we collected the data from the waste, we collected the data from the monitors of our surveillance, from our Ministry of Internal Affairs. And this kind of tool allows us to make the decision.
This modernization aligns with a comprehensive climate strategy to transition the reconstructed territories into fully decarbonized green energy zones.
President Ilham Aliyev's declaration of Karabakh and East Zangezur as a green energy zone with a 2050 net zero target is a manifestation of precisely this strategic vision. In these territories, 38 hydropower plants with a total capacity of 307 megawatt are currently in operation.
Furthering this cross-border cooperation, a memorandum of understanding was signed at the forum, officially making Azerbaijan's Shusha and Turkey's Trabzon twin cities. The document was finalized by Shusha's presidential special representative Aydin Karimov and Trabzon mayor Ahmet Metin Genç.
The host of the forum, Azerbaijan, opened its pavilion at the Urban Expo exhibition, showcasing its post-conflict reconstruction, green energy initiatives, and smart city concepts. Narchicek Jahangirli has more.
A
At the 13th session of the World Urban Forum, the Azerbaijan Pavilion has officially opened at the Urban Expo exhibition. It is the largest national pavilion at the exhibition, covering 1,500 square meters. Pavilion presents Azerbaijan's modern urban planning projects and its approach to sustainable development. Visitors can explore displays about Azerbaijan's urban development projects, the cultural heritage of İçeri Şehir, of environmental initiatives, tourism opportunities and examples of modern architecture. A special focus is placed on reconstruction projects in the Karabakh and East Zangezur regions. The pavilion highlights smart city and smart village projects being developed in the liberated territories, as well as efforts to create a green energy zone in the region. There is a strong focus on post-conflict urban planning and restoration processes throughout the liberated regions. The pavilion also features conference and networking spaces, virtual reality experiences, tourism and cinema corners, masterclasses and areas dedicated to Azerbaijani culture and national cuisine. During WF13, several sessions and discussions will be held at the pavilion. Topics include the Baku Master Plan 2040, digital transformation in energy systems, migration and urban management, and climate-related urban challenges.
Well, A News' Narchak Jahangirli also brings us the details of NGO Forum's activities. At today's talks, they highlighted growing recognition that urban development is no longer only a technical process, but also a platform for dialogue between government, civil society, and international partners.
For the first time in WF history, an NGO forum was held at the initiative of the host country, Azerbaijan. Hundreds of non-governmental organizations gathered in Baku for discussing the role of the civil society in decision-making.
UN Habitat Executive Director Anna Claudia Rosbach said that modern urban planning should not be limited to housing construction alone, but should be built on community participation and social solidarity. She emphasised that reconstruction efforts in Azerbaijan are being carried out with the active participation of communities and various stakeholders. Assistant to the President of Azerbaijan, Hikmat Hajiev, said that large-scale reconstruction and rehabilitation work is underway in the territories liberated from occupation. He noted that cities once completely destroyed are now being rebuilt and that the safe return of former internally displaced persons is being ensured.
Azerbaijan also, by its experience and historical experience, where Azerbaijani people historically established different cities that played a crucial role on the ancient Silk Road, and also modern experience of Azerbaijan in urbanism, where historical heritage and culture and historical architecture are combined together with the modern standards of the urbanism. And Baku city is one of the vivid examples for that. And with two models can coexist and preserve for the future generations, and also providing a people-centered approach where affordability, comfort of the population of the cities have been provided.
During the forum, officials also emphasised the importance of ensuring that the voices of Global South countries are heard more strongly. Hikmat Hajiev said that the Global South seeks cooperation and partnership rather than confrontation, and that civil society institutions play a particularly important role in this process. Malaysian government advisor on sustainable urban development, Maimuna Mohd Sharif, said that NGOs act as a key bridge between people, policy and practical solutions in decision-making. She noted that amid rapid urbanisation, challenges such as housing, social inequality and climate resilience can only be addressed through multilateral cooperation.
So I think this is the very important platform for everyone to learn, to relearn, to think and to retransform and to regenerate and to look into the knowledge and new ideas to share and the challenges, and also to share the problem and to share the solution that we can go back, then we can apply in their own city. So this is very important urbanization, sustainable urbanization forum in the world.
The chair of the board of the NGO agency, Aygun Aliyeva, said that for the first time in the history of WUF, the NGO Forum has become part of the official programme, which reflects the growing role of civil society. She noted that in recent years, Azerbaijan has become an important hub for international civil society initiatives and global solidarity platforms.
Well, the third day of the 13th World Urban Forum also saw an African ministerial meeting. Now, those ministers met with their international partners and spoke on specific measures and priorities for the future of rapidly growing cities. A News' Ayten Shukurova has the details.
Day 3 of the World Urban Forum in Baku is shifting the focus from promises to implementation. Ministers, UN agencies and African institutions are meeting to discuss how to turn the Nairobi Declaration, which adopted earlier this year during the Africa Urban Forum, into concrete action. The discussions center on some of the fastest growing urban challenges in the world: housing shortages, land access, infrastructure gaps, climate resilience and urban financing.
It's an opportunity for our different countries to be able to go over the African Union Forum statement and to also share our vision individually in individual countries as far as the Vision 2063. Which is mostly being able to build focus on climate control, resilient homes, and making sure that a home is more of a dignified tool rather than just an asset for the future.
We will have Francophone and Anglophone countries, Kenya, Ghana, Nigeria, Mali, Democratic Republic of Congo, Angola, and many others. I'm working in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and we are here with the Minister of Urban Development of this country. The main issues there are informal settlement, issue of mobility in the urban areas, and also the issue of infrastructure. On those issues, the discussion are going to be around financial, but also on technical issues, the development of the urban plans, because there is a lot of issue of land occupation and land planning.
Unlike many high-level forums, today's meeting is designed around adoption rather than debate, with participants expected to agree on implementation priorities and a unified African position ahead of the July 2026 UN review of the new urban agenda. Ayten Shukurova, İlkim Mehdiyev, A News.
Urbanization and development sometimes means dealing with post-conflict reconstruction first. Earlier, I had a chance to speak with the governor of the Kyiv region on what Ukraine is focusing on now, what it hopes for at the World Urban Forum here in the Azerbaijani capital, and how long will the recovery take once fighting stops. Here's what Mykola Kalashnik had to say.
Але завдяки нашому президенту, уряду, парламенту, завдяки міжнародним партнерам, зокрема азербайджанській стороні.
Thanks to our president, government, parliament, and thanks to international partners, including the Azerbaijani side, we have managed to restore 80% of the objects. Indeed, we have a lot to share. We have a lot of experience, and we are adopting the best practices, particularly from our friends and partners in Azerbaijan, following the example of how Karabakh is currently being restored. We have established corresponding partnership relations with the Irpin community, and we have ambitious plans regarding children's rehabilitation and the exchange of cultural and historical experience. Furthermore, we operate on the principle of building back better than it was before destruction. These are truly the best practices. We are currently implementing smart city systems, similar to how projects are being realized in Azerbaijan now.
The forum is also set to host an international conference on youth and decolonization, bringing together representatives from 22 countries this week. Here's the story.
The rule of my country, Morocco, is that they try to involve youth in all the processes. They make them not only a status, but also a decision-making person. We give a lot of value to youth right now because we see that they are very intellectual. They want the best for their country. The rule is that youth should be involved. we should be influenced to make a better country, better situation for every social class, to not marginalize poor and prefer the elites, and we should break this issue that we had from the colonization before.
Well, joining me now in A News' special studio at the World Urban Forum venue is our very own Anastasia Lavrina, who, as myself and all my colleagues here, has been running around and soaking up all the events, discussion, and concepts being floated here. Anastasia, third day, a lot of topics, a lot of issues. What are some of the key messages and outcomes, in your opinion?
Thank you so much. Indeed, I guess today we could see a lot of many participants participating in a number of events, sessions where the officials, representatives of the non-governmental organizations had a chance to discuss the key issues related to their countries, but also share the experience, grab the experience of Azerbaijan, and think together on how to proceed further. Just before, you mentioned very important panel discussion, neocolonialism in the 21st century and have to fight with this. The Baku National Group itself organized this session, and the representative from a number of countries shared the problems and the solutions they have in their own communities. The key outcomes of that session, for example, was that the countries, the governments in the countries, in the post-colonial period must have full control over their sovereign territories without outside interventions. Unfortunately, some of the countries still continue to involve the domestic issues. That's why it also affects the level of their urbanization, planning, sustainable development, and etc. That's why it's very important for the representatives from these countries to unite the efforts and further. I also highlighted the important contribution of the Azerbaijani government in the fight against neocolonialism in the 21st century. In particular, have the leader, the president of Azerbaijan Republic, His Excellency Ilham Aliyev, is always raising this issue on the global, let's say, international events on the global stage on why this is very important. Another very important, I will say, outcomes of today's day is that the special representative, special president representative on the liberated lands, Karabakh and Eastern Zangezur, are organizing the panel discussions, sharing the experience of Azerbaijan in the post-war, post-conflict development, specifically building the cities from the scratch, and how Azerbaijan didn't have a chance to restore sometimes, but to rebuild everything, the cities, the infrastructures, then the energy capacities of the liberated territories. And indeed, I would like to refer to the interview of His Excellency President Ilham Aliyev to Euronews, which is now already available in the social media platforms, where he once again highlighted the experience of Azerbaijan in this post-conflict development, the energy policy of the country, the cooperation with a number of states, and once again it was highlighted that Azerbaijan is the only country in the world exporting the gas to 16 countries at the same time, 10 of which are members of the European Union, 12 are European countries, and overall it's 16 countries. So the timely development of infrastructure, transport communications, the energy corridors, the salt and gas corridor, which is in operation after 2020, all of these altogether helped Azerbaijan to have very stable economy, stable political system, and stable policy aimed to rebuild and support the countries in the region and far beyond. And I would like to say once again, and I guess you will agree with me, that the experience Azerbaijan have in the post-conflict development is unique. And all of the participants who are coming here highlighting these great contribution of Azerbaijani government in this process, and also stating that World Urban Forum 13 taking place now in Baku, it's indeed the largest event from this history, bringing the experts and participants, heads of the governments and states from 182 countries. Over 40,000 participants. This is the first such a big event in the history of WUF, and the second largest event in the modern history of Azerbaijan after COP29. And I guess another specific element is that most of the experts also reconnect COP29 outcomes and the expectations from WUF 13, as the results of this forum will be the basement, will be the very important element and document for the discussions which will take place in New York in July 2026. So it will be theoretic and practical solutions for the future development, urbanization, sustainability, and safe and resilient community.
Well, Azerbaijan has certainly become the world stage for talks and problem solving. Anastasia, you mentioned the experiences Azerbaijan had in post-war reconstruction and development of its liberated territories. I spoke to that governor of the Kyiv region today at the Expo Center, and he told me that Kyiv, the region, is looking at some of the cities in those regions of Azerbaijan. How important is it that Azerbaijan shares this experience?
Azerbaijan already sharing this experience and ready to continue this policy in the future. And quite recent visit of President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky to Azerbaijan, bilateral meeting between two leaders. That's indeed a good platform for the future cooperation. And during that meeting, the experience of Azerbaijan was also mentioned. So once the war is over, and we all hope that the war between Russia and Ukraine will be over in the nearest time, then indeed the experience Azerbaijan have, the companies Azerbaijan is working, and our own specialist will be sharing its own experience with the countries like Ukraine, and I think in many other parts of the world. Our experience in many spheres can contribute a lot, specifically because Azerbaijan faced a lot of starting the process of rebuilding and reconstruction on the liberated lands, from the economic prosperity, from the prosperity of the green energy, renewables, electricity, building the stations from where there is nothing was left after the occupation. So this is exactly what experience, and since the beginning there were just some countries who joined the process, like the countries in Central Asia, for example, Turkey, and now Azerbaijan is a very powerful and experienced. So I think here during WUF 13 and later on there will be many more opportunities for Baku and Azerbaijan itself to join global processes.
Well, Anastasia, thank you so much for your analysis. Brilliant as always.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for watching. This concludes our news and our special here from the World Urban Forum venue in the Azerbaijani capital. But do stay with A News. Tomorrow we're going to bring you all the latest from this major UN event here in Baku. Thank you so much for watching, and bye.